The scent of hay, leather, and dust hung thick in the air at Lone Mesa Ranch. It was auction day, the biggest event of the season, and the barn pulsed with voices, boots, and the occasional neigh of a restless horse. Cowboys leaned against wooden fences, arms crossed, appraising animals with expert eyes. But nothing on the list drew more sideways glances than horse number 27, a tall chestnut stallion with a white blaze down his face, silent and untamed. Folks called him Redemption, but most only whispered the name, like it carried something sacred or cursed. No one noticed the little girl slip in through the side door. She couldn't have been older than 3, with soft blonde hair falling into her eyes and denim sleeves rolled past her wrists. Her small boots made almost no sound as she walked across the dusty barn floor, straight toward the stallion's pen. The crowd didn't stir at first, until the moment she reached out her hand. The horse froze, then lowered his head, and the barn went silent. It wasn't just a hush, it was as if the air had stopped moving. Every man turned. Big Walt Harrison, the auctioneer, removed his hat and stared. Clint McCoy, the P.O. who'd tried for months to break Redemption, muttered under his breath, "Ain't never seen him do that." The girl gently touched the horse's mane. Redemption didn't pull away. His breathing slowed, and then a single tear slid down his face. Gasps rose softly in the background, followed by stunned whispers. The child looked up at the horse with eyes too old for her years. "You remember me, don't you?" she whispered. No one had taught her that line. No one knew where she came from. But every person in that barn felt the weight of it. A woman came running in, gray hair disheveled, panic in her voice. "Ellie Mae!" she cried, rushing to the child's side. But when she saw the horse, her face changed. Color drained from her cheeks. "No, it can't be," she said, almost to herself. "That horse. He died with my son." Then Walt stepped forward, face pale. "That's not just any horse," he said quietly. "That's Matthew Carter's Redemption." And just like that, a long-buried past began to claw its way back to the surface. Virginia, Ginny, Carter couldn't breathe. Her knees trembled as she pulled Ellie close, but the little girl didn't seem scared, just calm, peaceful, as if she'd known the horse all her life. Ginny's eyes stayed locked on Redemption, memories storming through her like a flood breaking a dam. It had been 4 years since the fire. 4 years since she buried what was left of her son, Matthew Carter, and swore never to return to Lone Mesa Ranch. And yet, here they were, her granddaughter and the horse she believed had died with him. Redemption didn't move. He stared at Ginny with the same eyes Matthew had always talked about. Soft, deep, soulful. That horse had been more than an animal to her son. He was a companion, a shadow, a piece of his heart. Ginny remembered the nights Matthew would sit in the barn after long, bitter days, talking to Redemption like he was the only one who truly listened. When the fire happened, the house, the stables, all gone, she had assumed the horse was gone too. No one ever found a body. But no one had asked questions either. Behind her, the cowboys murmured. Some had tears in their eyes. Others just stared, unsure what to believe. Walt Harrison stepped forward again, his voice low but steady. "Ginny, I swear to you, that horse showed up here 2 months ago. No brand. No papers. He came limping out of the canyon, near the old mine trail. We called him 27-foot because he didn't respond to anything else." Ginny turned to Walt, her voice barely above a whisper. "He answered to Ellie." Walt's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "She called his name without ever hearing it," Ginny said. "She wasn't even born when he—" She stopped herself. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. Clint McCoy, who had been standing silently by the pen, stepped forward. "Ma'am, that horse don't let anyone touch him. Been bucking, biting, even kicked through a fence last month. But when she walked up," his voice broke. "It was like like he'd been waitin' for her. Ginny looked down at Ellie. The girl still held the horse's mane, humming softly now, as if she and the animal shared a lullaby the rest of the world couldn't hear. Something inside Ginny shifted. Fear, wonder, maybe guilt. She realized then, this wasn't just about the horse. It was about what really happened the night her son died, and what he may have left behind. That night, Ginny sat alone in her kitchen, the house quiet except for the ticking of the old wall clock and the soft breathing of Ellie asleep upstairs. Her tea had gone cold in her hands, untouched. The memory of redemption, alive, standing tall, staring at her with those same haunting eyes, refused to let her mind rest. She hadn't spoken Matthew's name out loud in almost 3 years. Not because she'd forgotten, but because it still hurt too much. And now, somehow, the past was knocking at her door, with hooves. On the table in front of her was an old tin box she hadn't opened since the funeral. Inside, with a few items recovered after the fire, Matthew's broken pocket watch, a singed photo of him on Redemption's back, and a letter. It was never mailed, the envelope still sealed. It had been addressed to her, in Matthew's handwriting. She'd been too afraid to read it then. But now, with the stallion back, the silence around his death suddenly felt too loud to ignore. Her hands trembled as she broke the seal. The letter was dated 2 days before the fire. "Mom," it began, "if something happens to me, please believe it wasn't an accident. I've been looking into something I shouldn't have. I didn't tell you because I wanted to protect you and Ellie. But if Redemption makes it back to you, it means I didn't make it out. And it means someone wanted to make sure I never told the truth." Ginny froze. Her heart dropped. The page fluttered in her hand. The letter continued, "There's a man. He works for the land company buying up property around the canyon. I think they're hiding something. I saw something in the mine trail. I took pictures. They're in a safe box under Redemption's stall. Please, protect her. Ellie." Ginny pushed back from the table, her breath shallow. The fire hadn't just taken her son, it had stolen the truth. And someone had made sure she never went looking for it. But now, with Redemption alive and back in her life, Matthew's warning had resurfaced. And the danger that had been buried was no longer resting quietly. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, and in the distance, a single coyote cried into the night. Ginny stood and looked toward the barn. That horse had returned for a reason. Maybe to finish what Matthew started. Maybe to protect what he left behind. Either way, she knew now, the fire was only the beginning. Before dawn, Ginny drove back to Lone Mesa Ranch. The fog was thick on the highway, rolling low like ghosts across the road. Ellie was still asleep in the back seat, her tiny hand clutching the sleeve of her flannel blanket. Ginny hadn't slept, not after the letter. The words "safe box under Redemption stall" had repeated in her mind all night like a broken record. She didn't know if it was still there, or if it ever had been. But if there was even a chance Matthew had left something behind, she had to know. Clint McCoy was already in the barn when she arrived, tossing hay into the pens. He looked up, surprised to see her. "You're back early," he said, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Everything all right?" "I need a favor," Ginny replied, glancing toward Redemption's stall. "I need you to help me check the ground under that horse." Clint didn't ask questions. He had seen enough strange things over the years to know when something was bigger than him. He unlocked the gate to Redemption's pen, speaking calmly to the horse, who watched silently as they entered. Ginny knelt by the far wall and began clearing out the hay with her hands. She half expected to find nothing, maybe just dirt and disappointment. But then, her fingers hit metal. It was an old ammo box, rusted at the corners, wrapped in a leather strap. Her breath caught as she pulled it free. Clint helped carry it out while Redemption watched them both with eyes that didn't blink. Ginny sat on a bale of hay and opened the lid. Inside were 3 envelopes, a small notebook, and a digital camera. She stared at the camera in disbelief. It was Matthew's, scratched, weathered, but still intact. She turned it on. The screen blinked. The battery was almost dead, but enough charge remained to display a single photo. It showed a man standing at the edge of the canyon trail, holding a flashlight over a pile of crates marked hazardous waste. The timestamp read just hours before the fire. Ginny's hands shook. He wasn't imagining it. Matthew had uncovered something real, something dangerous, and someone had wanted to silence him before he could expose it. From behind her, Ellie stirred awake and walked toward Redemption's pen again. As she pressed her small hand against the wooden gate, the horse stepped closer, protective, like a sentinel. Ginny turned and looked at her granddaughter, then back at the camera in her hand. The past hadn't stayed buried. And now, neither would the truth. Later that evening, Ginny sat across from Pastor Elijah Boone in the small church office that smelled faintly of cedar and candle wax. The camera rested on the desk between them. Pastor Boone leaned in slowly, eyes fixed on the screen as the image of the crates glowed faintly. "Where did you find this?" he asked, his voice low and deliberate. "Under Redemption's stall," Ginny replied. "Just like Matthew said in his letter." The pastor exhaled sharply and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Ginny, I never told you everything about that night. I should have." He stood, walking to the window. "The night before the fire, Matthew came to see me. He was scared, but determined. Said he'd found something near the mine trail. Chemicals, barrels, something that didn't belong out there. He believed they were dumping toxic waste on private land." Ginny's heart sank. "And you didn't tell the sheriff?" "I tried," he said quietly. "But Roy, he told me to drop it. That there was no proof, and I'd be risking Matthew's reputation. Then the fire happened. And after that, no one wanted to reopen wounds." "But my son was murdered," Ginny said, the words tasting bitter in her mouth. "And now that horse is the only witness we have left." The door creaked open. Clint McCoy stepped in, hat in hand. "I didn't mean to interrupt," he said, eyes lowered. "But I checked the area near the old mine trail like you asked, Pastor. There are still tracks out there. Big tire marks, fresh. Someone's been moving things in and out again. Last few nights." He looked at Ginny. "Whatever Matthew found, it's not over." Ginny rose slowly, her hands trembling but her jaw set firm. "Then we bring it to light. All of it." She turned to Pastor Boone. "We go to the sheriff. We show him the photo, the letter, everything." But Pastor Boone hesitated. "You don't understand, Ginny. Roy Talmadge was part of that land deal. He signed off on it. If Matthew was getting close to something criminal, Roy might have had reason to protect it." A long silence filled the room, broken only by the soft ticking of the pastor's old clock. Ginny clutched the camera tightly, the weight of her son's death suddenly heavier than ever. She looked at Clint, then at the pastor. "If we can't go to the sheriff, then we find another way," Clint said, his voice steady. "But you need to be careful now." Outside, the wind had picked up, and somewhere in the distance, the sound of an engine echoed through the canyon. Someone was watching. Ginny didn't sleep that night. Every sound outside her farmhouse felt sharper: the creak of a shutter, the rustle of leaves, the distant bark of a dog. She sat by the window, watching the darkness, her shotgun propped nearby. Ellie slept upstairs, unaware of the storm building around them. And Redemption, tethered in the old barn behind the house, shifted restlessly in his stall, as if sensing something coming. At sunrise, Clint returned in his old pickup, his face pale and jaw tight. He brought a folder, maps, photos, copies of old land deeds. "I dug into it," he said. The land near the mine? It was never officially sold. But 2 years after Matthew died, a private shell company claimed mineral rights. He tossed the folder onto the table. They've been using that land to dump illegal waste for years. Quiet. Off-grid. And I'd bet everything I own that Roy Talmadge knows exactly what's going on. Ginny stared at the papers, bile rising in her throat. And no one stopped it? Clint shook his head. They buried it deep. No records on county files, no traceable names. But if we can get one of those trucks on camera, maybe even follow them, we'd have enough to blow it wide open. It was a dangerous plan. But Ginny felt the pull of something greater now, not just justice for Matthew, but protection for Ellie. That little girl had inherited more than a name. She had inherited a truth someone had tried to erase. Ginny placed a hand on the camera, then on Clint's shoulder. "We do it tonight," she said. "We follow them." That evening, under cover of dusk, Clint and Ginny waited near the old trailhead where the photo had been taken. Redemption stayed behind with Ellie and Pastor Boone, safe in the barn. The night air was cold, still. And then, headlights in the distance. A black truck with no plates rumbled up the path and stopped near a rusted gate. 2 men got out, both wearing heavy coats and gloves. One opened the truck bed while the other lit a cigarette and stood guard. Clint whispered, "We can't get closer, but if I can zoom in enough," he raised a long-lens camera. But before he could snap the shot, a second vehicle appeared behind them. Fast, no lights. Ginny's breath caught in her throat. Someone knew they were watching. The headlights came fast, blinding in the rearview mirror. Clint grabbed the wheel, threw the truck into reverse, and floored it. Gravel kicked up like a storm behind them. Ginny held onto the dashboard, her heart racing so loud it drowned out her thoughts. Whoever was in that second vehicle wasn't just curious, they were coming to stop them. "They're not bluffing," Clint said through gritted teeth. "They knew we'd be out here." The narrow dirt road twisted through the canyon, hemmed in by rocky walls and dry brush. Clint took a hard left, tires skidding as the truck fishtailed. Behind them, the black SUV gained speed. Ginny looked back and saw the glint of something metallic in the passenger's hand. A rifle. She ducked low. "They've got a gun." Clint veered off the main trail, bouncing over rocks and dried creek beds. The truck slammed hard on each dip, but it kept going. "Hang on," he shouted. They crashed through a low barbed fence and cut through an abandoned cattle field. The SUV didn't hesitate. It followed, closing the gap. Then a loud crack, a gunshot, rang out. The rear window shattered behind Ginny's head, spraying glass across the cab. "We can't outrun them forever," she said, breathless. "We need a place to hide." "There's an old hay shed about a mile out. No road, just pasture," Clint replied, wrenching the wheel toward an overgrown path. The truck tore through dry weeds and brush, the engine groaning. Another shot rang out but missed. As they approached the shed, Clint swerved behind it, killed the lights, and slid the truck into a dip behind a pile of rusted fencing. Silence. They waited, not moving, not breathing. The SUV roared past seconds later, its lights sweeping the field, missing them by inches. When it finally disappeared into the night, Clint exhaled and slumped forward, gripping the wheel with white knuckles. Ginny looked over, eyes wide. "This isn't just about illegal dumping. This is organized. Dangerous. They were ready to kill for this." Clint nodded slowly. "And now they know we're onto them." Back at the ranch, Pastor Boone sat on the porch with Redemption tied close beside him. Ellie slept inside, unaware of the chaos unraveling just miles away. But when Redemption suddenly raised his head and neighed sharply into the dark, the pastor stood up slowly. He had a bad feeling. Something was coming, and it wasn't over. By the time Clint and Ginny made it back to the ranch, the eastern sky had begun to lighten. casting a cold gray over the land. Dust clung to their clothes, and neither had spoken much since the chase. Redemption paced in his stall, restless, as if he had sensed everything that had happened out there. Pastor Boone met them at the gate with tired eyes and a worried face. "They came by here," he said in a low voice. "Black SUV. No plates. I stayed quiet. They didn't get out. Just circled the property once and left." Ginny's stomach dropped. "They know where we live now." Clint nodded grimly. "Then we've got no time left." Inside the house, Ginny checked on Ellie. The child slept peacefully, her tiny frame curled under a quilt her father had used as a boy. Ginny knelt beside the bed, brushing Ellie's hair back gently. Her heart ached, not just with fear, but with something deeper. A reckoning. For years, she'd told herself the story the world gave her, that Matthew died in an accidental fire, that there was no reason to dig. But now, the truth was clawing its way to the surface, and it demanded to be seen, no matter the cost. In the kitchen, Clint spread out the contents of the metal box again. Maps. Names. The photo of the hazardous crates. But it was the notebook that held the most weight now. Inside were pages of Matthew's writing. Names, plate numbers, dates, and, most damning, a receipt for an unregistered shipment dropped near the mine trail just days before the fire. It was all there. Enough to expose everyone involved. "We could go to the press," Clint suggested. "Get it into national hands. Somewhere they can't bury it." Ginny shook her head. "Not yet. They'd come after Ellie. You saw what they're willing to do. Then what do we do?" She stood still for a long moment, eyes on the horizon. "We make them come to us. But on our terms." Her voice was calm, but steel-edged every word. "We'll set a trap. With redemption. They don't know what he knows, but they believe he's a threat." Outside, the wind began to rise again, stirring dust and leaves across the fields. In the distance, a coyote howled, the same as the night before Matthew died. And this time, Ginny was listening. The trap was simple, but risky. Clint parked the old ranch trailer near the edge of the canyon, in plain sight of the trail used by the trucks. Redemption was loaded into it, calm but alert. Hidden beneath the false floor of the trailer were copies of every document, every photo, and a flash drive with Matthew's files. Ginny stood nearby, a hand on the gate latch, her heart pounding beneath her denim jacket. "He was always braver than I gave him credit for," she whispered. "Matthew saw it coming, didn't he?" Clint nodded, his jaw clenched. He knew exactly what he was up against. They didn't have to wait long. By twilight, the rumble of tires echoed from the canyon. Two black SUVs crept around the bend, slow and deliberate. Ginny stood tall beside the trailer, her presence intentional. This wasn't about hiding anymore. It was about making them look her in the eye. One of the SUVs stopped, and a man stepped out, clean-shaven, boots polished, wearing a sheriff's badge that no longer meant anything to her. Roy Talmadge. He approached with a calm, rehearsed smile. "Evenin', Ginny. You're a hard woman to reach these days." "You never tried hard enough," she shot back. "You lied to me. About the fire. About everything." Roy's smile faded. "You're meddling in things you don't understand." "I understand plenty," she said, stepping aside to reveal redemption. "And so did my son. That's why you burned his life down, isn't it?" Behind her, Clint was hidden in the brush with the camera, recording every word. Roy's eyes narrowed. "Where's the footage?" Ginny folded her arms. "Let's just say it's in a few places. And if anything happens to me, or to Ellie, or to this horse, it goes public." For the first time, Roy hesitated. The second man stepped from the other SUV, stockier, sunglasses even at dusk. He whispered something to Roy, who turned back toward his vehicle, tension rising. Ginny felt the moment change. This wasn't negotiation anymore. This was threat. Then a sound broke through the tension, Redemption's sudden, sharp whinny. Not fear. Warning. Behind the brush, Clint tensed. Something was wrong. Ginny glanced toward the barn road, headlights. Pastor Boone's truck was coming fast, Ellie in the back seat. Ginny's heart seized. No, she breathed. She had told him to keep her away. But it was too late. They weren't just coming for the truth anymore. Now, they were coming for everything she had left. The moment Pastor Boone's truck skidded to a stop, Ginny knew the plan had unraveled. Ellie pushed open the back door and ran toward Redemption before anyone could stop her. "Ellie, no!" Ginny cried, her voice cracking with fear. But the girl was already at the trailer gate, her tiny hand pressed to the stallion's muzzle. Redemption stilled instantly, eyes focused, ears pinned back, guarding her. The armed man stepped forward, lifting his jacket just enough to reveal the gun tucked at his waist. "Get the girl out of here," he muttered to Roy. But something shifted. Redemption reared with a powerful cry, hooves striking the metal sides of the trailer. The sound was deafening, not of panic, but defiance. Ellie didn't flinch. She stood there, one hand on the horse, the other raised toward Roy without fear. "My daddy loved this horse," she said, voice clear and small. "And he wasn't a liar." The words hit Roy like a slap. For a second, his expression faltered. His hand fell away from his belt. Pastor Boone stepped between them, holding out a flash drive. "It's over, Roy. It's all here, and already uploaded to 3 different journalists. If you touch one hair on that child's head, the world will know everything by morning." Silence. Then Clint emerged from the trees, camera in hand, recording. "Already knows," he said. "We've been live streaming since you got here." Roy backed up slowly, the weight of his lies collapsing onto him in real time. The second man turned and ran for the SUV, tires spitting gravel as the vehicle peeled away into the dark. Roy didn't follow. He stood still, jaw tight, eyes hollow. He knew it was over. 2 weeks later, the arrests began. Environmental crimes. Corruption. Cover-ups. Roy Talmadge was stripped of his badge, and others followed. The footage had made national news, not just because of the corruption, but because of the horse. Redemption became a symbol. A survivor. A messenger from a past too heavy to bury. Ginny sat on the porch, Ellie curled beside her, drawing horses in a notebook. Redemption grazed in the field, free now, no longer marked as 27. His real name was known again. "Do you think Daddy can see us?" Ellie asked. Ginny smiled softly, eyes misting. "I think he never stopped." And for the first time in years, the air no longer smelled like smoke, but hope.